I'm Nancy DuBrule-Clemente, and I'm the owner of NatureWorks Horticultural Services in Northford, Connecticut. We are an organic garden center, and we design, install, and maintain organic landscapes for people. We also are an education center. We have a teaching tent, we do garden walks, and we write a weekly email that's full of information. We do a weekly Facebook Live. I've written 2 books on gardening, and I've written many articles on gardening. So I love education, and I love teaching people about organic gardening. Well, it's not natural to have a monoculture, and a monoculture is all the same plant growing in the same place with nothing else in it. That's actually not the way nature works. So when you try and achieve that, you can achieve that because grass can be the winning plant, but you have to use a lot of inputs to do it. So you have to feed it, and you have to overseed it, and you have to make sure that you can outcompete the weeds. So it's not that it's impossible, it's just that you're setting yourself up for a very large task that isn't necessary. If you can just get past the concept of everything in the lawn has to be a single blade of grass forever, and invite in some of the flowers that would normally grow in the lawn. My lawn at home has violets in it, and violets are the larval food plant of the fritillary butterfly, and butterflies lay their eggs on these leaves. Without violets, there are no fritillaries. So when we decide that the lawn has to be green grass and no violets are allowed, then the violets aren't doing their job. And there's dandelions in the lawn, and they are here and they're not going anywhere. So in order to eliminate them, you've got to use some toxic poisons, which I find impossible to do because bumblebees live underground and they nest underground. And every time you spread poisons on your lawn, you kill bees. And we need bees, we're losing our bees. So it's important to me that we think beyond this fake aesthetic of a green carpet, and we move into embracing the ecology and the interweaving of life in our world. And it's beautiful that way anyway. It's hard to maintain without a lot of work and inputs. So seeds blow around, dandelion seeds, violet seeds, every kind of seed blows around and wants to grow. And if you have just the slightest open space in your lawn, those seeds will take. So for you to stop that, you have to use either a weed seed inhibitor, which in the organic world is corn gluten, or what they do in the poison programs is they put down what's called a broadleaf weed killer, which kills everything but a monocot, which is a grass. And that just is not right to me. You can't put poisons down like that. So you're going against the grain of what you would see in nature. You do not see a monoculture anywhere in the natural world. You just don't. It's just not the way nature works. So it's better to just embrace the diversity on every level. It brings you more ecological function to your landscape too, and it feeds a lot more creatures that live in the lawn itself. First thing you have to do is test your soil. You absolutely have to test your soil. You're shooting blind if you try and put anything on your lawn you don't know what it is. When you test your soil, and we use the Yukon testing laboratory, University of Connecticut, it tells you if you need lime, if so, whether you need calcium lime, dolomitic lime. It tells you what nutrients you have and you don't have. And you've got to have the right balance to grow a healthy lawn. And so you test your soil. At home, we're adding compost. We've added lime twice. And we're adding compost, and we're adding organic fertilizer. And in last fall and this spring, we're overseeding to fill in the bare spots. We had a huge tree come down, and that left a huge void in the yard because there wasn't grass growing under the tree. So we have to work on establishing the lawn again. So there's tons of good products out there that are all natural, all safe, all organic. And so there's no reason not to go organic, except it's going to take a little bit of time to transition, and you've got to have patience because it's not going to happen overnight if you've been using chemicals for years, because you don't have any life in your soil. You've got to build the life back up in the soil.
So if I understand correctly, the first step is testing the soil.
Absolutely.
And then you can sort of decide what to introduce over a long time.
Once you test the soil, it will tell you what you need to do to make the soil healthy, and healthy soil grows a healthy plant. So if you just say, I'm going to lime my lawn every year, and your pH gets too high, then all the nutrients in the soil will be locked up, and you won't be able to provide the nutrients to the plants no matter what. If you don't lime and your pH is what mine is naturally at home, which is 4.8, you can't grow a good lawn in a 4.8 pH. It's too acidic. The nutrients don't work. So testing is important, and then adding what's needed to sort of get the right balance. In Connecticut, you're not even allowed to add phosphorus fertilizer to your lawn unless your soil test says you need it. And that's what, too much phosphorus is and too much nitrogen, that's what's causing all these ponds and lakes and streams to turn green. We don't need to do that. There's alternatives. It's not hard to do. We have this really great book that we've been studying. It's written by Doug Tallamy, and it's called Bringing Nature Home. And his research over the years has shown that native insects co-evolved with native plants, and non-native plants do not host the same number of native insects, and birds feed their young only insects in the spring. So if we have plants that don't support an insect population, the birds can't eat the insects, and the whole cycle breaks down. So the plants themselves are a part of an evolution that's been taking place. So native plants in that regard sort of complete the chain of life that was here to begin with. Now, we sell tons of native plants. We also sell non-native plants, but we don't sell invasive plants. And invasive plants will take over for the natives and displace them. So we carefully select out, if we want to grow a rhododendron, for example, there's 1 or 2 native rhododendrons, but the majority of rhododendrons that you see in May are not native. And everybody wants a rhododendron. So it's not that it's a bad thing, it's just that it's not going to take over the world for a native plant. But if you put in burning bush, for example, which will seed into the woods, it will take over the entire ecosystem of the woods, and then the ecosystem will be disrupted. So we're losing populations of plants, and we're losing populations of native insects due to the fact that we aren't supporting them with the plants that would support the insects. So it's important to realize that it's all part of a link in a chain. You have to identify what you have. There's the Invasive Plant Working Council website. There's lists and pictures available easily on the website through Yukon. So you have to identify what you have and realize how vigorous it is and how quickly it's spreading. In my yard, I have garlic mustard, which is just spreading everywhere, and I spend a lot of time snapping off the flowers so it doesn't go to seed. I do have bittersweet, which I've been working on for 15 years, and that's a very invasive vine that pulls trees down, kills them, and smothers them. So, you first have to know what they are, and I do consults all week long, and half the people I visit don't even know the invasive plants that are in their yard. And the problem with some of them is that the state of Connecticut and other states in New England have been planting them along the side of the roads. They brought them in for a reason, and then they became invasive. So now, like Japanese honeysuckle, the beautiful white fragrant flowers that bloom in the summer at the beach, that will take over the world. That's an invasive. It's illegal to sell it. But people have a soft spot in their heart for it because they remember it. And burning bushes were planted by the side of the highway, and they turn bright red in the fall. So I even have written articles of replacements for burning bushes that have a wonderful fall color, so that you can pick native plants that will give you that same function. But they have to recognize them, and then they have to be willing to pull them out. Japanese barberry harbors deer ticks. I mean, it's a proven thing that if you have Japanese barberry, the red berries seed into the woods, your woods is filled with barberry, you will get more deer ticks than anywhere else. Removing Japanese barberry is not fun, but it's the thing to do. If I moved into a house that had it in the yard, I'd remove it all. We sell ladybugs, we sell beneficial insects that either eat or parasitize the bad bugs. If you blanket spray your garden with a pesticide without targeting that pest at the proper time of day or night, and knowing exactly what you're spraying for, you kill the good bugs and the bad bugs. Then it's your job to provide protection for the rest of the life of the garden. So people are so easily talked into blanket spraying or just spraying when they don't even know what the pest is. When you walk into NatureWorks, we say, okay, we need to know what the pest is. Then we need to look up the pest's life cycle. Then we have to understand its life cycle. You could see damage on a leaf and not see the pest because the pest is already gone. We tell people if you are going to spray with an organic product, you're going to target just the pest on that plant, not the whole garden, and you're going to spray in the evening after the pollinators have stopped flying, because when you spray a bad bug, you're also going to spray beneficial wasps and beneficial bees and every kind of pollinator out there without realizing it, because you don't know what they look like. Some of them are so tiny they look like dust, but they're doing their job. So we're very conscious when we tell people how to control a problem, that we tell them to target it and tell them exactly how and when to do it. And the last thing we want them to do is to just say, oh my God, I have bugs in my garden, and spray the whole garden. That's the wrong thing to do. Well, we want people to use organic products. So there are plenty of organic controls for pests. So if they're going to use a product, we want it to be something that's safe. And then once they decide to use it and know what they're using it on, we want them to apply it targeted and at the right time of day. Not during the day, but in the evening after the pollinators have stopped flying. So it's not that every pesticide is good. We don't like to see, there's lots of very toxic pesticides. There's things like Roundup that now have been proven in the courts that they cause cancer. So we don't use Roundup, we don't sell Roundup, we have alternatives to this. We don't use some of these really toxic poison sprays, we have alternatives. Our alternatives are much safer to use, but they still will kill what you're targeting. So you have to use them with conscious care. I'm optimistic about the young generation and the upcoming generations because they get it. They walk in here, there really aren't any all organic garden centers that I know of. They walk in here and once they realize what we're doing, they're so relieved that they don't have to have somebody try and talk them into something toxic, and everything we sell, we understand and we can explain to them. But I'm not optimistic about the direction that the EPA is going and the government regulations are going, and that's really scary. But, hopefully this is just a blip in the radar and things are going to turn around, because I think that the younger generations really know what they want and they're going to have the power to vote in what they want. I'm from the 60s and the 70s. I knew what I wanted, but it wasn't common. When I started in 1983, I was considered crazy. Now I'm considered wise. So, it's like, so we have to capture the hearts and minds of everybody that's coming up, and then we have to try and teach and convince the older people who maybe have been using these toxins all along to change their mindset. And sometimes it's because they see their grandchildren playing on the lawn, or they see their dog playing on the lawn, or their dog gets cancer, or something happens and they have this aha moment and they say, okay, I get it. Why am I doing this? Why have I been doing this? I bought into this. Why did I buy into it? So it's got to be, personal, every yard, every family, have the conversation around the table, talk to your neighbors, put your signs out. We have a monarch way station sign. We have a wildlife habitat sign. We have, an organic lawn sign. We put them out proudly, and that brings up the conversation. But the best advertisement for this are beautiful, healthy gardens filled with bees and birds and monarchs and butterflies and rabbits and life. And that shows people it's possible. Back when I started and there was a ton of poisons being used, they were like, we don't care if you're organic or not, just have a pretty garden. So I had to be a really good horticulturist in order to be able to convince people that organic works. Now people come to us because we're organic, and that just makes me happy. It really does. Who are you listening to? Are you listening to the guy next door who's using poisons, whose lawn is a carpet of green? Why would my lawn that has purple and purple and white spotted violets and little blue wildflowers mixed in with the green be less pretty than all green? Whose aesthetic is that? And 99% of the insects that we see here don't sting us or hurt us. I mean, we work among bees like crazy, and we don't get stung from the bees. People are afraid of insects now. We have kids that are afraid of butterflies because they don't know what they are. They're so petrified. A lot of people have grown up being afraid of nature. We need to change the aesthetic. We need to change the way we look at things in order to realize that we are poisoning the earth and bees are going extinct. And if you think that for the sake of everything being one color of green, the world should go on, I disagree with you. And you put this up on your YouTube channel, I will post and argue with any single person that wants to argue with me. I've been doing this for 36 years. I can talk to people about this. Believe me, it's the only way to go. That's where we have to go. And I think there's a lot of people that in their heart of hearts agree with me, but they have this sort of weird peer pressure going on about, I live in a neighborhood and it's got to look perfect. It doesn't have to be that way anymore. We can change that. Because I'm a horticultural geek and I love plants so much, and there's a lot of plants I want to grow, and if they're beautiful, I want them, and I want to teach people about them. And there's nothing wrong with having a mixture. It's just that you don't want to encourage people to grow invasives. But when you walk around and take pictures of the plants, you're not going to know the difference between a native and a non-native. If you zoom in on some orange flower, if it's beautiful, you're going to want it, you know. So I'm a geek. First and foremost, I'm an organic gardener, and I'm a plant geek, and I love plants, and my job is to turn the world onto plants. So people come here from all over the place to buy cool plants, and you know, so our mission is very wide. We want to teach people, we want to enhance the ecosystem, teach people organics, and we want to turn people on to gardening. You know, you got to get into this. This is so much fun. This is the world around us. Everything involved, whether it's seeing our first hummingbird. People are texting me today, telling me they saw hummingbirds. You know, when the first monarch comes, we're all jumping around. You know, that's just the way it is.